We're going to solve quadratic equations today by completing the square. My suggestion would be to get paper and take good notes so that you can use those when you go to do the problems. Okay, we're going to start just by factoring, and you should be able to do this quickly and easily if you recognize what kind of polynomials these are. So the first one's going to be factored. X plus 4 squared is equal to 0. Therefore, x has to equal negative 4. The second one's going to be factored as x minus 11 squared equals 0, in which case x would have to be 11 to make this work. And the third one is going to be factored x minus 6 squared is equal to 0, and x would have to equal 6. I hope you noticed that each one of these was a perfect square trinomial, and that's what made factoring so easy. When a trinomial is a perfect square, there's a special relationship between the coefficient of the x term, in this case the 6, and the constant term, which is the 9. And here's what it is. If you take the coefficient of the x term and cut it in half, so 6 divided by 2 is 3, and square it, it gives you that third term. Okay? So that's that relationship. So here I want us to do this. If it's in the form of x squared plus bx, it's not a perfect square because it doesn't have that third term that makes it a perfect square. You can add a third term to that trinomial to make it a perfect square trinomial. This is what we call completing the square. Okay? So that's the process here. So here's two examples. The first one, we've got the 6. So again, just like we did before, you're going to take half of that b value and square it, and that's a 9. So that means I would take the 9 and put it right here on the end, and now that makes that a perfect square trinomial. Okay? Here's just an example. Regardless of what b is, you take half of the b value, and square it, and then add it right on the end, and you are completing the square. You're taking a polynomial and making it a perfect squared trinomial. These are 6 steps that you need to write these down, and then you need to have them right next to you as you try these problems, and then you'll kind of get this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to write the equation in the form of x squared plus bx. Now, please notice there is no number in front of the x squared. It doesn't say ax squared. We want that to be a 1. So 1x squared plus bx equals some constant number, no variable on that side. Then we're going to find the b divided by 2 squared. So we're going to find what it is we have to add to both sides to complete the square. Then that's what we do. We complete the square by adding that value to both sides of the equation. We add it to both sides to keep it balanced. And then we're going to factor the perfect square trinomial. Okay, so we just created a perfect square trinomial. We're going to factor it. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, when you take the square root of a positive number, there's 2 roots, the positive and the negative root. And then we're going to write 2 equations using the positive root and the negative root and solve those. Now, I know that that seems crazy, but pause the video, write that down, make sure you have that perfect. Here are the steps laid out for you. So step 1, make sure it's written in the form x squared plus bx equals c. That's exactly what we have here. Okay, step 2, take the b value, half it, and square it. So half of 16 is 8, 8 squared is 64. Add the 64 to both sides. This is now a perfect square trinomial. And this is just a number. In this case, it's 49, which makes it nice and easy. Okay? Next step is we factor our perfect square trinomial, and you should be good at that. And then we're going to square root both sides. So the square root and the square cancel out and just leave you with the x plus 8. And the square root of 49 is plus or minus 7. And then set up 2 equations, one with the positive root and one with the negative root, and then solve each one. This one we solve by subtracting 8 from both sides, and we get a negative 1. This one we solve by subtracting 8 from both sides, and we get a negative 15. Those are your 2 values. Now, just a really quick reminder, you can always check this by setting it equal to 0, which would be x squared plus 16x plus 15 is equal to 0. Replace the 0 with a y. Throw that into your calculator and graph it, and you should see that it crosses the x-axis at -1 and -15. Okay, so now with your steps in hand, you try this one. Okay, so here are the steps. Oops, should show up there. All right, so here's your 6 steps. Look and see what you did. We had to add 6 to both sides first so that we had it in the right format. We took half of -4, which is -2 squared is 4. Add the 4 to both sides. Okay, factor the perfect squared trinomial. Take the square root of both sides, remembering to use the positive and the negative roots. Now you'll notice here that we just left it with a radical 10. Okay, and we'll talk about that actually. And then add 2 to both sides down here. Set it up with a positive radical 10 and negative radical 10, and there's my 2 answers. Okay, if need be, we can approximate that, but we'll talk about that. Okay, all right, here's 2 more for us to do. Now, on this particular one, we need to be careful because it's not, first of all, it's not in the right format, so we're going to have to add 2 to both sides. But also, it has a 3 as its a value. That needs to be a 1. So we're going to have to divide everything by 3. Okay, now check your work against mine. We started by adding 2 to both sides. Okay, that's almost there. Divide everything by 3, and that's going to give us fractions, so it's here in the black. All right, same process. Take half of the b value, which is 5, 6, square it, and add 25, 36 to both sides. Now, just leave this the way it is. Okay, don't try to simplify it or anything like that, because what you're going to do is you're going to factor this perfect square trinomial, and it's going to be x minus 5, 6. You know it's 5, 6 because that's what you just squared to get it. Okay, here we need a common denominator. It's going to be 36. That's going to give us 49, 36. Square root both sides. The square and the square root cancel out with each other to leave you x minus 5, 6. And then square root of 49, 36 is plus or minus 7, 6. Set up your 2 separate equations. One where, add 5, 6 to both sides. And then we got 5, 6 plus 7, 6, which is 12, 6, which reduces to 2. 5, 6 minus 7, 6 is negative 2, 6, which reduces to 1. Now, for the second one, you're going to do the same thing, and we're going to start out by adding 15 to both sides. Then we realize that that a value is not 1, so we divide everything by -3, and here's where we end up. Half of your b value squared, so half of -4 is -2. -2 squared is 4. Add the 4 to both sides. This is a perfect square trinomial, and here's this. Now, we can stop right here, because I know that in the next step I'm going to factor and then I'm going to take the square root. I cannot take the square root of a negative ever, ever, ever right now. So what I'm going to do is this one has no solution, no roots, no zeros, and that's it.